Good afternoon, everyone. Today we'll be discussing the moral development theory. But before we dive into our topic, let's first know the learning objective. So at the end of the session, students should be able to define the concept of morality and explain the different theories that tackle the different aspects of moral development among children. So morality involves understanding concept of right and wrong and serve as a basis for individual accountability. When we say morality, it refers to the understanding of concept of right and wrong, which form the foundation for an individual's sense of accountability and ethical behavior. By understanding the concept of morality, it can help guide decisions and action in everyday life by distinguishing acceptable conduct from unacceptable conduct. Moral development begins in childhood through socialization, critical during middle childhood with intellectual growth, enabling moral reasoning. So, as children learn through socialization, the process by which they absorb the values, norms, and behaviors from family, peers, and society. So, during this period, children develop the cognitive abilities necessary for moral reasoning, meaning they begin to think more deeply why certain actions are right or wrong, rather than merely following rules. There are two main approaches to studying moral development. First is the cognitive aspect, focusing on justice principle by Piaget and Kohlberg. So, the cognitive aspect of moral development focuses on how individuals reason about justice, rules, and fairness. So, this approach emphasizes logical thinking and the ability to apply principles of justice when making moral decisions. Emotional aspect, emphasizing care and empathy by Carol Gilligan. She emphasized the importance of care and empathy in moral reasoning. She argued that moral reasoning also involved understanding, relationship, compassion, and responsiveness to other needs, highlighting a more interpersonal and emotional approach to morality. So Kohlberg extended Piaget's theory, proposed that moral development is a continual process that occurs throughout the lifespan. So he proposed that moral development is a continuous process that happens throughout a person's life. So he used Piaget's storytelling techniques to tell people stories involving moral dilemmas. So he told people stories involving moral dilemma, such as the hen's dilemma, where a man must decide whether to steal a drug to save his dying wife. After hearing the story, participants were asked if the man was right or wrong to steal, but Kohlberg focused more on the reasoning behind their answer rather than the answer itself. He based his theory upon research and interviews with groups of young children. A series of moral dilemmas were presented to these participants, and they were also interviewed to determine the reasoning behind their judgment of each scenario. So Kohlberg used moral dilemmas stories to see how people justify their moral choices, revealing how their moral thinking had grown more advanced over time based on justice and fairness rather than just rules or consequences. So he analyzed their explanation to identify different stages of moral thinking, which he grouped into 6 stages within 3 levels of moral development: the pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. This method showed how people's moral reasoning evolved from focusing on avoiding punishment to conforming to social rules, and finally to consider universal ethical principle. Now let's proceed to the first morality, which is the pre-conventional morality, age 4 to 10. The person is motivated by obedience to authority. Moral code is shaped by the standards of adults and the consequences of following or breaking the rules. So during the pre-conventional stage of moral development, children's moral decisions based primarily on avoiding punishment or gaining rewards, rather than understanding the broader ethical principles. The sense of right and wrong depends on obeying adults and following rules set by authority figures like parents and teachers. So the stage 1 is the obedience and punishment. This is the earliest stage of moral development common in young children. Children see rules as fixed and absolute. Children's morality is motivated solely by punishment. So it is the earliest level of development and common among young children. So children see rules as fixed and absolute, meaning they believe rules must always be followed without question. Their sense of morality driven primarily by the desire to avoid punishment. In other words, children behave correctly simply to escape negative consequences rather than understanding the reason behind the rules. Next stage is the individualism and exchange. Children account individual points of view, judge action based on how they serve individual needs. Reciprocity is possible but only if it serves one interest. So here, children start to realize that not everyone thinks the same way they do and that people have different needs and desires. Unlike the earlier stage where rules were followed just to avoid punishment, at this stage, children begin to make moral choices based on what is best for themselves. But here, children are motivated by practical benefits. So the example of the stage 1 is I will keep quiet so that teacher won't get mad at me. So it is the obedience to avoid punishment. The stage 2 is I will let you copy mine if you do my homework. So there should be an exchange. If you let her or him copy your work, he or she will needs to do your homework also. There is an exchange. Next is the conventional morality, age 10 to 13. The people focus on following social norms and customs, begin to internalize the moral standard of value adult role models, reasoning based on the norms of the group to which the person belongs. So this stage is the children develop between age 10 to 13. They're more focused on following social norms and customs that are accepted in their community. So at this stage, people begin to internalize the moral standards of important adult role models, such as parent, teacher, and other respective figures. The moral reasonings shift from self-interest to maintaining the expectation of the group they belong to. So this means that their decisions are guided by the desire to fit in, gain approval, and uphold social order. The stage 3 is the interpersonal relationship, also known as good boy or good girl orientation. Focus on living to social expectation and rules. Emphasis on conformity, being nice, consider how choices influence relationship. People's moral reasoning centers on the importance of being good in the eye of others. So this involves following social rules and behaving in the way that earns approval from family, friends, and community members. So individuals at this stage actively try to conform the expectation because they want to build and maintain trust and positive connection with others. The stage 4 is maintaining social order and consider society as a whole when making judgments. Focus is on maintaining law and order by following the rules, doing one's duty, and respecting authority. Becomes aware of the wider rules of society to avoid guilt. A need to not be criticized by a true authority figure. So individuals make moral decisions based on the importance of following laws and rules to keep society functioning smoothly. They feel a strong sense of duty and respect for authority, aiming to avoid guilt and criticism. Moral behavior is viewed as essential for social stability and the common good, guiding people to prioritize collective responsibility over personal interest. Example of the stage 3 is I will buy the dress so that my friend will like me. So you need to fit into that group. So you need to buy that dress so that you can be accepted by that group of person or your friends. So you need to fit in. You should not cut the class because it's against the school rules. So this is a maintaining social order. You need to follow the rules and orders. So you have to not cut the class because it's against the school rules. Last one is the post-conventional morality, which is the adolescence to adulthood. People look beyond convention to determine moral norms and appropriate social interaction. Judgment is based on how self-chosen principle. Moral reasoning is based on individual rights and justice. Here is that individuals develop their own set of ethical principles that maybe go beyond or even challenge traditional rules and social norms. So their moral reasoning is guided by personal sense of justice, fairness, and respect for human rights. People at this stage critically evaluate existing rules and law, recognizing that not all societal conventions are fair or just. They make decisions based on universal ethical principles such as equality, freedom, and the sanctity of human life, rather than simply obeying authority or social pressure. Stage 5 is the social control and individual rights. Becomes aware there are times when they will work against rules or the interests of particular individual. Emphasis on the social contract and the maintenance of individual rights. So here is that individuals understand laws and social order are based on social contract and agreement designed to protect the right and welfare of the community. However, they also recognize that the rules are not absolute and may sometimes conflict with individual rights or ethical principles. So this stage shows a deep commitment to ethical ideals where moral judgment are guided by personal integrity and a strong sense of justice. Individuals are willing to accept the consequences of their action if they must disobey laws that contradict this universal principle. It reflects moral independence and courage based on reasoned ethical conviction. So the last stage is the stage 6, which is the universal principle. That reasoning is based on universal ethical principles and abstract reasoning. Follow the externalized principle of justice even if it's against the law. Moral judgment is motivated by one's conscience. So it is the highest moral development where individuals base their moral reasoning on universal ethical principles such as justice, equality, and respect for human dignity. So this principle internalize and guide their behavior regardless of law or social roles. And that's it for my topic. Thank you.